Okay, good evening, everyone. This is I'm Ben from Let's Talk About from the Australian Anti-Ice campaign, and I've got a guest here today. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. So this is the Let's Talk About Ice show. This is a weekly talk-back show on Facebook that deals predominantly with ice addiction. Here you have the opportunity to listen to guest speakers, share their lived experience of ice addiction in the hope that sharing can help others. The various guest speakers come from all walks of life, which shows ice addiction can happen to all types of people. Our target audience are people in active or recovery, are in active addiction or recovery, as well as family members or friends that are looking for support and advice for a loved one who is affected by ice addiction. Throughout the show, we will feature numbers and websites for those seeking further assistance, as well as answering any questions you may have that can be sent via the show's commentary. We want people to know that help is available and that there is life after ice. Okay, in saying that, I'll give you a few numbers here. So there's the 1-800 No to Ice, which is 1-800-666-86423. The family support number is 0481 844 555. The AAIC head office is 0756656063, and the Australian Anti-Ice Op Shop is in 130 Scarborough Street, Southport. So if you want to go and check that out, go down and show your support there. Now, as I said in the opening introduction, we do deal with predominantly ice addiction. However, today we have a special guest named Bill, and Bill has suffered from mainly alcohol addiction, but he has got quite a bit of time up in with clean time. So we're happy to bring Bill on the show in the hope that he can share with us his journey in recovery, and people can listen to any advice, any pointers that's going to help in their recovery. So I'll introduce Bill. Good evening, Bill. How are you?
Good evening. How are you? Very good. So, thanks, Ben.
I'm going to open it up to you, Bill. And
okay.
I'll let you speak. You can say whatever you want, and then we're going to go back and recap and go into a bit more depth in certain areas. So fire away. Say what you need to say, what you want to say, who you are, etc.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Ben. My name's Bill. I'm an addict, and I'm a migrant to this country. I came here from Scotland when I was 10 years old, and we lived in Tasmania for a little while, and then moved to Sydney from there, where I went to high school there. Now, I started work. I was 18, around about 18 years old. I started work for a chemical company, and I didn't drink at the time. I had experimented a couple of times with it, and one of those experiments didn't go very well. I drank some kind of home brew that was made by my dad, and the report is that I was dancing out in the garden under a sprinkler. And it's quite cold in Tasmania. It was Christmas time.
Right.
And I was very sick, and the room was spinning, all the horrible effects. But anyway, I didn't really start drinking until I was in my job for about a year or so.
Right.
Now, I knew that my dad had a problem with alcohol for as far back as I can remember. He used to come home on a Friday night and be in quite a state, with carrying booze under his arm, and he smelt and behaved very strangely, which I didn't like. But, my brother was in trouble with drugs and alcohol when I was 15 years old. We went to see him at Miracle Haven, run by the Salvation Army at Morisset.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so I could see the damage that could be done by drugs, And it sort of frightened me a bit, you know, and that's one of the reasons I didn't start drinking until the age of 19. You know, I tried to avoid it. My mother was always on my back, you know, please, I hope you never drink. I don't want you finishing up like him or him. I said, yes, Mum, yeah, I'm going to be a good boy. But of course, you know, life is life. And I kept getting the invitations. At the time, I was doing a course at Tech at Ultimo in Sydney. And I knocked back a lot of invitations to go and drink after the classes at night time on a Thursday. And this night I just went with the crowd. I can't even tell you what I was thinking, but that first night that I spent in the pub, we were in a beer garden. It was a busy night, a lot of noise. And I had the first schooner, and it was like a transformation. Normally I don't like a lot of talk and loud, you know, people trying to talk over each other. Well, you know, I don't know who to listen to. But I'll tell you what happened after about the second or third schooner. The magic started to happen, and it was like somebody turned the volume down, and I was able to focus on what people were saying, and you know, and it just everything was better, you know, and I started to get the Superman effect, you know, like something great's going to happen on this next drink, you know.
Yeah.
So there I was off, you know, and so my alcoholism progressed. I didn't know, of course, I didn't know I was an alcoholic then, but it progressed, you know, from a couple of nights out a week, and then I started drinking in the mornings, drinking at work, all the things that I'd seen my dad do, and you know, I'd shake my head at. I started doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So at the age of 27. I went to see a doctor at Cogra. His name was Dr. George Wilson. Now, I was sitting there in his office, and he asked me a lot of questions. You know, at the end of it, he said, "You're an alcoholic." And, of course, I wasn't shocked. But at the same time, I'm saying to myself, oh, yeah, but you know, I'm sure you've all been there. I'm different. But he did say, we'll have to do something about your alcohol addiction.
Right.
Right. So then he was telling me it was an addiction. Now, he's a man that should know. A lot of people went to see him, and he'd send them off to AA or NA or even those other fellowships, you know, ACA, you know, I went there, and Al-Anon, and, you know. So he actually gave me a little book, and it was called Alcoholism, the Family Disease.
Right.
You know, so it affects, as you know, it affects not only your life, but the lives of all those that care about you.
Yeah.
So, you know, I went to a few AA meetings back then, and I stopped going because my mum actually said to me one night, geez, you're going really well. Maybe you don't have to go anymore.
Yeah.
So I stopped going, but I didn't drink for 3 years. And for this time, I'd left the job that I had for 10 years. I was asked to leave because it was becoming too unreliable. And they knew that drinking was a problem. Yeah. So I left that job, and we moved up here to Coffs Harbour. Now, I was about 33 at the time.
Yeah.
And I decided I'd go out and drink a little bit, because I'd been here on holiday years before, and knew that the nightclubs and everything were here then, you know.
Mm-hmm. So
I finished up pretty sick, and called someone from AA, and they came and picked me up, and I went to my very first AA meeting here in this area in Nambucca Heads.
Right.
And I was made to feel, you know, they made me feel comfortable, reassured me that I was in the right place, and encouraged me to keep coming back, which I did, thankfully, you know, because I was pretty sick at the time, you know. I wasn't thinking straight, and everything was a bit foggy. But now, my first introduction to NA, I think I was about 3 years sober. There was a fella rang me and said, look, I've relapsed and I really need to get to a meeting. And at the time, it was at the old Salvation Army building in Coffs Harbour here on a Tuesday, you know. So I took him there, and I've gone in, you know, like, who's here and what's going, you know, what are they going to think about me? You know, because I've only smoked marijuana on a handful of occasions, and I'm not a smoker, and it just didn't appeal to me. But you know, that from that very first NA meeting, I knew everybody that was there. I've walked in and I've seen all the same faces.
Yeah.
Now, my opinion these days now is that addiction it covers everything: alcohol, any type of drug, any type of mood-altering substance.
Yeah.
I've never seen ice. Obviously I've never used it, and I hope it stays that way, because it wouldn't be the result would be catastrophic for me.
Yeah.
You know, once an addict, always an addict. It doesn't matter what drug it is; it's going to destroy me and the people around me. So, I mean, that's not why I keep going to AA and NA. It's because I love it and I love helping other people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's what I've done from the very start. You know, I'm in my 26th year now.
Right.
Oh, I turned 26 in August this year.
Yep.
And that's a really great feeling. I feel really good about that, you know. I've met so many different people and heard thousands upon thousands of stories, people's alcoholism and addiction. And, you know, and it's great to see the people coming in if you can help them. You can't help everyone, because I believe that you can't get recovery until you reach that point where you know you've had enough, and you know, and you've been it's destroyed you. You don't have to go down as far as some of us have gone. You know, you can get off at any point as long as you accept that you're an addict. You know, and not just a different variety. You know, I honestly believed that I would wake up one morning and I'd be okay, and you know, I could have a few drinks. That's back in the days when I was drinking.
Yeah.
And people kept saying to me, Bill, you know, you pull your socks up, grow up, and all this kind of thing, because they knew I was a bit out of control with the drinking. And most normal folks, of course, don't understand that when you're in addiction, it becomes a necessity. You know, you can't really function without it, and you become really convinced of that. You know, that this disease centers in the mind. And you can't really see clearly until you've been, you know, completely abstinent from drugs and alcohol for a period of time. And that's different for everybody. For some people, it might be a few months. But usually when there's drugs involved, it can take much longer, you know, it can take a few years. And you really need, if you're serious about recovery, you really need to listen to people and give it a fair shot and not walk away from it like I did years ago, you know. But these days, you know, I'm not, I don't resent leaving it till I was 37 because I had to do what I had to do to reach it. As I said, you just got to reach that point where you surrender, you know you can't beat this and you need help. So so I mean I attend one NA meeting a week usually, and I've been doing that for 22 years. When I first started NA, there was a rehab in town called Who's were in town, and they were here for about a year and a half.
Right.
And of course, you had all the young guys talking about their heroin addiction. And, you know, I've never used those drugs, but I could relate, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the reason I've kept going back. And as I said, a lot of the people that go to NA, they're my friends, you know. I've known them now for a long time. And, you know, the result of doing that, you know, recovery for so long is the quality of life, you know, the joy of living.
Yeah.
You know, and helping other people. You know, quite often you'll hear in meetings, this is a selfish program. I don't believe that. I hate hearing that, because when you do service work, you know, early on people said to me, do service work. You know, it'll be really good for your recovery. Now, when I was doing that, so like picking people up, taking them to meetings, opening meetings, become a secretary of a group, I wasn't thinking about myself. I was thinking about the people that I was helping, what I could do for them. So I wasn't, you know, I forgot about myself. And that's how we get well, you know.
Yeah.
But that we have to become unselfish to get well, you know, to get well. Yeah. Because in addiction, we spend so much time just thinking about ourselves and our own needs. And of course, drug addiction makes you sick. And when people are sick, they don't function properly. They don't care about other people. They're only concerned about themselves, you know. That's how it is. But, you know, these days I can sit in a coffee shop for an hour or so and be completely relaxed. And that's one thing you know, during the years that I drank, I'd never be able to do that. That'd be the last thing on my mind. So simple things in life, you know, make me happy. And, you know, I've always maintained that regular meetings, it's very important. You know, so all I can say, you know, if you're suffering from addiction, give NA a fair shot. It works for the majority of people. And listen and learn, you know, keep the open mind. I'm still learning, and I think I always will, you know, till the day I die, and who knows what happens. I've got no idea what happens after that.
Yeah.
But then, you know, I used to worry about my future, you know, because I knew I didn't have one.
Yeah.
But now I don't worry about that kind of stuff, because I know that if I'm doing the right thing today, tomorrow will take care of itself.
Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know what else to say, Ben.
Well, look, and those of you who have just tuned in or might not have heard at the start, this is Let's Talk About Ice show. However, we've got a guest speaker on today that has suffered from alcohol addiction and abuse, and his name is Bill. But before I do that, I'll fire out some numbers again for those of you that do have an ice addiction. You can contact these numbers, and even if you yourself don't have that problem, you may have a loved one that you might be reaching out for. So there's 1-800 No to Ice. That's 1-800-668-6423. The family support number is 0481 844 555. The Australian Anti-Ice Campaign head office is 0756656063, and the op shop is at 130 Scarborough Street, Southport. So if you want, pop in there and go and check out what they're all about down there. But as I said earlier, we've got Bill. He hasn't really had a nice addiction, but he has suffered from addiction problems in the form of alcohol abuse. And I think what you said earlier, Bill, hit the nail on the head, that addiction's addiction, whatever the substance is, that's going to alter your normal bodily function. So So Bill's given us a bit of a recap. He's from he's a Scottish native, but he's been in Australia since what age did you first come over here, Bill?
I was 10 years old, Ben.
10 years old.
10.
So
10.
Yeah, 10. And so what I want to do is, because you did mention about alcoholism in the family. Even though you're a late bloomer, that the influence of that alcohol within the family that had an effect on you, I guess, that you mentioned in your opening. So what I want to do is let's just focus on your childhood, and even though you may not have been drinking, how did that affect you? Like seeing that parental figure or in the form of your father. Tell us a little bit more about that and how you perceived that drinking and that sort of behaviour was a normal thing.
Yeah. Well, my dad used to come home usually on a pay night. He'd be drunk and behaving very, very strangely, singing songs and and the smell, that stale alcohol smell. I didn't like it at all.
Yeah.
And things were happening. Like sometimes my dad wouldn't come home, so my mother would be crying, so I could see it was causing problems.
Yeah.
And she'd be out looking for him around the pubs. So it was a big issue. And one time we went on holiday.
Yeah.
And of course, he was supposed to come home, pay night with the holiday pay, so we could go on holiday and everything.
Right.
And he didn't come home.
Right.
So we finished up going on holiday without him because where we were going, it was a relative's little holiday hut. Yeah. So he said, "No, you're going on your holiday," and he let us stay there. Yeah, but it just caused problems and fighting. Yes. Between my parents.
Yeah.
Divorce was always on the cards.
Yeah.
Walking on eggshells, not knowing whether we still had a family the next day.
Yeah.
Because they'd be talking about separation.
Yeah.
There was parties at the house, all sorts of people there.
Yeah.
And it did seem to get worse there for a while, especially when we were in Tasmania. Between the age of 10 and say 13, I'd say was the worst period. And my parents were always asking me the question, or us kids, my brothers and my sister, who are you going with? Because we're splitting up.
Right.
Right. Now sitting here today, that wasn't a very good choice because they were both nuts.
Yeah, and
my mum drank for a period as well, and she was crazy on it, but she's not alcoholic.
Yeah. And I guess it's not a question that's really you should put on children. Who do you want to go with?
Exactly. Yeah. So I had issues there. It's not a normal household to be brought up in.
No.
My parents loved me, but unfortunately, alcoholism takes its toll on the kids. Adult children of alcoholics, they call it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that applies to the other people parents that have used drugs. So there's a lot of damage there. Of course, there's a lot of damage in the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess we see it as a generational thing, don't we? You mentioned earlier your brother. He went on to have his substance abuse issues, and so it's affected both the children in that respect. But fortunately enough, you've been able to put to stop that generation to continuing on in the of going to the NA and addressing that problem. There was an area that I found interesting. You mentioned, and I think it was your first sort of experience with drinking, and you mentioned about your father's homebrew. And when you mentioned that, I straight away I thought about that situation. It was a few years ago now, and it was about 3 or 4 people, and I think it was a father and a son as well. And they've got they were doing the homebrew and they got the mixture wrong, and I think I don't really know the scientific names for it all, but the alcohol became ethanol, I believe, and it killed 2 or 3
Oh
blokes.
yeah. Ethanol is poisonous.
Yeah, that's right, and
Yeah,
that can happen with the homebrew, can't it? So
yeah.
it's worth pointing out. You need to be careful with these backyard, homebrew kits. Even though you can buy them at the shops and that, but if you don't really know what you're doing, and you're getting stuck into that stuff, and I can imagine it would be a pretty horrible death, to die in that sense. It wouldn't be like quick or painless. I imagine it'd be quite painful.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of people see alcohol as a soft drug, but anyone that's been drinking hard and alcoholically for a number of years, when they stop and go to a detox, detox can be quite dangerous.
Yeah.
So these days they medicate people coming off alcohol because you can have seizures, etc. In the old days, they used to just do it cold turkey, as they call it, which would be quite scary, delirium tremens and hallucinations, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a dangerous drug, and it should be viewed that way. Good luck to the people that can do it. I'm not one of them, and today I'm glad of that. I'm in a good place today, and happy with life, and that's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good point that you make about it not being a soft drug. I think people get that idea because it is legal, and you can go down to any shop or supermarket.
Yeah.
You can buy alcohol, and alcohol's been in many cultures for thousands of years. But that's not to take away from the gravity of the effects of what alcoholism can do to people, not just the alcoholic, but to families and to people that do things that hurt other people while drinking. I mean, I've shared my story on here about ice addiction, but some of the most dangerous behaviours that I've ever been involved with has been as a result of alcohol. I've been because of alcohol. I had more fights than I had hot dinners when I was a young fella. I've had a few blokes that they died, killed in car accidents. And no doubt, and there's people out there listening today that they know someone, or they've directly been affected by someone who's been injured or killed from alcohol addiction. So, I think that's an important note to make, that it isn't a soft drug. It's a dangerous drug. And if you're having a problem, I mean, yours was progressional. You were a late bloomer, as you mentioned, but not long after you were using it to drink in the morning, and you were going to work, and I imagine you were able, in the beginning, you were able to function all right, but it sort of it became a problem, and it affected your work. Tell us a little bit more about that, Bill. How that went on to affect your work and your life.
Yeah, well, normally I'd be quite reliable.
Yeah.
But as my drinking progressed and it affected me worse, I some mornings I just could not get out of bed, and the only thing that I was thinking of is I need another drink. And I'd be ringing up work and saying, "Oh, look, I've got the flu, and I won't be in today." Now that was early in my drinking, before it got really bad.
Yeah.
And so I still had the sense to ring them and let them know what was going on, and that was good. I'd go to the doctor and get a certificate, and the little little Irish lady that I used to go and see, I told her that I had a bit of a drinking problem.
Right.
And I'd go there and I'd say, "Doctor, I've been drinking for a couple of days. and I didn't get to work, and I need a certificate. And she'd be saying, "Oh, you poor thing, it's the flu again. The flu." I said, "Thank you, doctor."
Yeah.
And she's the one that eventually said to me, "Would you like to stop drinking? I can send you to someone that you can go and talk to." And of course, I had to say yes. I had to say yeah. And I think I was at the point where I really did want to do something, but I still had no idea what I was up against, But going back to the work situation, I was at work sometimes where I really should have been in the hospital from alcoholic poisoning.
Right.
And with alcohol, if you have a big night and you get to work and you might be okay and you think you're okay, but as the alcohol is wearing off a few hours later, you start to feel really bad.
Yeah.
It used to hit me pretty badly, you're shaking and, I couldn't think.
Yeah.
And a couple of times I just had to say to my boss, look, I'm not well. And I'd head straight to the pub, have a few drinks, and I'd be, but what's the problem? Life's great, a few drinks would fix it.
Yeah.
But and it's progressive, right? So a few years later, I wouldn't even ring work. I'd be in a bit of a mess and sick, and I just wouldn't go in. I wouldn't ring them. And they didn't like that much at all, because I did have a fairly responsible sort of a job, and they had to cover for me, and it made it difficult for them, So eventually, I got warned that many times, about taking days off and not ringing up, and they got a bit sick of that and asked me to leave. So I did that job for 10 years, and all through that time, of course, my drinking was getting worse, and so I left it, and I actually had a resentment. I said, "How dare they?" I didn't want to lose my job, but I had no option. I had to go.
Right.
And I said, "That's it. I'm never working for anyone else again. I'm going to be independent." I went and bought a fishing boat.
Right.
And not a great decision, but that's the decision I made. It was a bit of an adventure, I must say, but I still hadn't got the drinking problem out of my mind. I still wanted to drink, and of course, then we moved to Coffs Harbour. During that, not long after I left that job that I had, about a year later or so. Yeah. And at the time, I had a fishing boat, and we brought it up to Coffs Harbour. So that's what I was going to do. I went fishing I was a professional fisherman for 10 years. And of course, I went out and drank a few times, and that's what got me back to an AA meeting. And I'm pleased to report that was almost 26 years ago. But I've done a few different things. I got rid of the fishing boat, and when you're in recovery, you start to get a bit creative, and you're wondering what am I going to do next? What can I put my hand to? Wanting to learn new skills, and I started a photo frame business.
Yeah.
And I did that for 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And then I got another boat, but this time I took people fishing for a living.
Right.
And that was great. I really met a lot of people, and of course, being in recovery, it went well for a while, and then I let that go. I had a few bad years with the weather, and I said, "Oh well, I'm not making money here. I'm losing it."
Yeah.
But through all that, I've stayed sober and kept going to meetings.
Yeah.
So it's been great. It's been a great experience. No matter what I put my hand to, I've enjoyed it. I don't regret any of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not done yet.
So we'll back it up a bit. What the turning point? I guess that was when you were talking with your doctor, and what had it?
Yeah, look, that doctor I went to see in Sydney, Dr. George Wilson. He's dead now. He died probably 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And he helped a lot of people in that area in South Sydney there get to meetings and get into recovery.
Yep.
Now I didn't know he was in the fellowship when I first went to see him.
Right.
And, the questions he was asking me, I just felt I had to answer him honestly. He knew, it was like he knew me inside out, and I couldn't lie to him.
Yeah.
I could lie to all the other doctors, no problem, but not this guy.
Yeah.
And so he sent me off to AA.
Yep.
And I'm at a meeting one night. I'm waiting there to go in, and he showed up. I said,
Right.
"Oh, what's he doing here?" He wasn't there to see me. He was there because he was an alcoholic addict.
Right.
And then the penny dropped. I said, "That's why he knows so much." And yeah.
So I guess it's fair to say that there needs to be a moment in order for your recovery to be possible. You need to,
Yeah.
I guess, you need to identify the problem, and the way you identify that problem is being honest with yourself and saying, "Yeah, well, I think I do have a problem here," and I think that's the first step in being able to then move forward from there and get that advice and get that help. You need to admit you have that problem, and I suppose that's part of the 12 steps. It is. I think you'd know a lot about the 12 steps. That first what do you call it? Step involves admitting you have a problem. So tell us a little bit about that and what it meant for you.
Yeah. Well, when I went to my first meeting at Nambucca Heads, I went there. I knew I had to go and do something,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying to myself, I'll go and have a look, and we'll see what happens. And that night I went there, I was pleasantly surprised because I'd painted a picture of how those meetings were going to be in this area, and it wasn't a pretty picture. I thought, well, there'll be a couple of old guys there, and I'm 37, still thinking I'm young, and it's going to be boring for me, and I don't know how I'm going to keep that going. But there was people there of all ages, and they all seemed happy. They were smiling. Life looked good for them. It looked attractive.
Yep.
And I said, "Yep, I think I can do this." And they were saying, like, "Well, we'll see you tomorrow night. Here's a meetings list. We'll see you again. Keep coming back."
Yep.
So I said, "This is great. I think I can do this." And I've never looked back. Yeah. So and just going back to that doctor, I was in his office there one day, and he's got the point across to me that it's not a moral issue, this alcoholism or addiction.
Yep.
Now I'm sitting there, and he's got a phone call, and he got off the phone and said, "Alcoholic doctor." That was another doctor ringing him to make an appointment to come and see him about his alcoholism.
Right.
So that he's trying to tell me, look, it doesn't matter what background you're from, how intelligent you are, where you're from, what you've got, it doesn't matter. Alcoholism, addiction can strike anyone. He's trying to tell me, don't feel bad about it. This is the card that I've been dealt in life. Now that I know, I've got to play it as best as I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it does, and it's the same with ice addiction. It affects all people, all walks of life. From truck drivers to students trying to cram before tests or whatever they got coming up. People, young people using it as recreational drugs. A lot of people are affected by alcohol and the drug ice. It just happens to be that you've experienced alcoholism, and it's quite interesting that you just mentioned that doctor was seeking advice from another doctor in how to overcome this problem. And I guess that's the common occurrence here is to in your message is to seek out that help, sort out that advice. And before I put it back over to you, Bill, I'm just going to mention to those of you who may have just tuned in, we're talking to Bill here, and Bill obviously he's had an alcohol addiction problem. Even though this show is normally does deal with ice addiction, it just shows that any form of addiction which takes away from your normal way of living is going to become a problem and can become a problem. But those of you that are listening and you do want to seek that help from the Australian Anti-Ice campaign, you can sort that help through these numbers, which is 1-800-NO-TO-ICE, 1-800-668-6423. The family support number is 0481 844 555. The Australian Anti-Ice campaign head office is 07 5665 6063. And then, of course, we've got the op shop at Scarborough. So, don't be afraid of seeking out that advice. That's how that's the first step of getting that help. And of course, you ring these numbers and they can help you in taking it to the next step. But the whole purpose of this show is to create a conversation around addiction, to let people know that there is life after addiction. There is, of course, and Bill's been able to come on here and share his experience in ice addiction, in alcohol addiction. Sorry, but we'll move.
That's a
forward.
yet, Ben.
Hey,
that's a yet.
Yes, not yet. We'll move forward, and I'm interested into hearing your thoughts on what do you think that people out there have never experienced addiction, especially alcohol addiction. What may they not understand about being an addict?
What they don't understand is they think that people have just got to make a decision to stop. Why can't you stop? They don't understand that people who are in the grip of addiction can't help themselves. They are completely powerless. Once they take that first drug, they are completely powerless. They lose the ability to make decisions. That's why they destroy their own lives and the people around them, because we're just not responsible. With my drinking, I'd be saying to myself, well, I've got work tomorrow. I've got to be home at 7 o'clock for dinner. I wore a watch in those days. But once I started drinking, that watch was no good to me. I wouldn't get home for that dinner. And chances are I'd forget that I had a job to go to, and I'd just get lost in that world of drinking and, music, nightclubs, and forget that I had a home to go to. And it was almost as though I wasn't making the decisions. If I told the doctor that there was a little voice telling me that, keep going, mate, you just drink tonight, and we're not going home yet. If I told that to a doctor, he'd think you'd be telling me I was schizophrenic. But it's the disease. It's like there was someone else there with me. But once I had that first drink, he took over. I'd no say. He'd tell me when I'd had enough to drink and when I should go home. It was almost like it was out of my control, and I'm sure people that are using the drugs would have a similar experience. And that just becomes the focus of your life. Nothing else matters.
Well, okay, so you've got quite a few years up, 26 years, and that, that's a good achievement. What do you? And I guess we've touched on it a little bit throughout, but we've got about 6 minutes left, and I really want to get this message home to some people, because of course different things are going to work differently for different people. But what's helped you? What are some of the key factors that have helped you in your recovery, Bill?
Well, I think I just had to be beaten enough times, to be sick enough times to realise that what was going on with me, I could not fix myself because I've tried so many times and failed and wondered why. Because I stopped drinking many, many times with a sincere, sincerely, I said to myself, this is it. Life's going to change for me. I'm doing this. I'm never going to drink again. And I'd last for a period of time, only to be drawn back to it. It might have been a phone call from a friend saying, where are you? We're at the club. And I'd say, I'll be there in a minute.
Yeah.
And the next day I'm wondering what happened. Why did I do it? I had no idea. But that's addiction. That's addiction. We cannot explain our actions.
Yeah.
Now, I think I'd just been beaten that many times, and I knew it was time to surrender. And I think you've got to get to that point, and I hope for young people that they can make that decision before they cause a lot of pain for themselves and their families, But you've got to make that decision yourself. No one can make it for you.
Yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah.
So I can take people to meetings and show them and explain a lot of things to them, but until they make that decision for themselves that this is really what I want, I'm going to give it my best shot. And I think you really need to go to NA, AA, and give it a while. Get yourself a clear mind, and then you can make a decision whether you are an alcoholic or an addict, and what you want to do if you want to continue with it.
Yeah, that's great advice, and I think that's important. For people that they need to come to that understanding or that acceptance of that they do have that problem, and then begin to make those steps that are needed, which involves becoming part of that recovery community. And it's like you said, me myself, I didn't think the NA and all that was going to be what it turned out to be. I thought they were just all washed up ex-junkies or ex-alcoholics, but it's not that at all. It's just people that have an addiction problem, and they're getting around other people, sharing their story because there's a power in sharing, and working through their problems and voicing their situation in life. And that helps, sharing your story and listening to others. And of course, the Australian Anti-Ice campaign, that's what we're all about. We do have that buddy system where when you ring up and you seek that help, then one of us, our members, will get alongside you. And part of that is being available to that person and taking them along to meetings such as Alcoholics Anonymous if it's needed, or the Narcotics Anonymous, which is probably the better option if they do have that ice addiction. But it's great to be able to talk about all these different issues we have in life. It's not just ice addiction, even though the show is called Let's Talk About Ice, and ice addiction is quite prevalent throughout the communities. But Bill, you've come on the show tonight, and that 50 minutes went quite quick, didn't it, mate? Yeah,
already. I know, we could talk about this all night.
Yeah, but look, you've come in here, you've spoken openly and honestly. We appreciate that. We just hope that people can listen to this story and reach out and get that much needed help and begin that process, because there is life after addiction. So before I hand it over to you to wrap it up, I'm just going to throw out these numbers once again. So guys, don't hesitate calling these numbers, because this is what we're here for. We're here to help you. So it's 1-800-NO-TO-ICE, 1-800-6686-423. Family support numbers 0481 844 555. The AAIC head office is 07 5665 6063. And of course, the op shop, which is up at 130 Scarborough Street in the Gold Coast, which is on Southport. So, look, I'm gonna hand it back over to you, and you can say your final goodbyes and just throw out there to those listening who are in addiction, your final thoughts. So I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to say that if you're an alcoholic, I've never seen an alcoholic that can use drugs successfully. It always brings them undone.
Yep.
And vice versa. I've never seen an addict who can drink and get away with it. They might think they can get away with it, but it does eventually catch up with them. And sometimes with some people, that can take a couple of years. They might be, say a heroin addict or an ice addict, and they say, oh, look, I can still enjoy a drink. And all might be well for a little while, but eventually, and it happens in the subconscious, they don't know that the alcohol is having an effect on their thinking, and they go back to the drugs and wonder what happened. I know what happened. They used alcohol when you've got to be completely abstinent.
Yeah.
And also, I've noticed with people who've been in recovery for a while and relapse, that the relapse is always horrific.
Yeah.
I think that the reason for that is that once you become an addict, it's in your mind. All that's programmed in your mind. This is how we do it. This is how much we use,
Yeah.
And when you've been in recovery for a little while and your body has been free of drugs, if you pick them up again, it hits you like a hammer. And I've seen people die because of that, because their mind is telling them, I used this drug, that's how much I used, but your body's not used to it. If you've been off it for a year, and same with alcohol, it just hits you like a ton of bricks, and it's very, very dangerous. So if you're in recovery, please stay. Please stay, because relapse is not a good thing at all. Some people just don't make it back, and they do die, unfortunately. So but you can have a lot of fun in recovery. It's not all grim, and my life's never been better, and I'm quite happy for the fact that I don't have to put any substance in here to make me feel different, because I feel pretty good. And that's priceless. That's what's supposed to happen, and it's a journey, no matter what stage of recovery you're at, try and make the most of it. You're going to have days where everything's going wrong and you don't want to be in meetings, but please go. You just got to keep going and have faith that a program like NA can help you. And,
great advice, mate. Great advice.
I wish you all the very best.
All right.
It's not easy, but very, very worthwhile.
Thanks, Bill. We'll wrap it up there, but you've been great. Thanks for your story, Bill, and we hope others can reach out and sort that help if they need it. See you later, Bill. Thanks for your story, mate. Catch ya.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Bye.
Good on you. Ta.